Lavish, spectacular, bursting with emotion. The musical has been a feature of cinema ever since Al Jolson uttered the immortal words, "You ain't heard nothing yet." Throughout Hollywood's golden age and the decades that followed, cinemas were alive with the sound of musicals. At their best, they showcased the extraordinary talents of some truly great stars who we'll hear from in this programme. Gene Kelly, Julie Andrews, Barbara Streisand, and the man we'll start with, Fred Astaire. The verdict on his first screen test was, can't act, can't sing, balding, can dance a little. Well, here's a bit of his dancing, being discussed on Parkinson in 1976.
A lot of these numbers that you danced for these people who wrote them, you were dressed up in what became your sort of trademark, the top hat, the white tie and tails. Two questions. How much is that really you?
Well, I don't like wearing a full dress suit. I hate it. Well, I had so much of it that people thought that I was born in it. I began to too. But it was necessary for the thing we were doing at that point, and I actually haven't worn it anywhere in a film for quite a long time.
No.
And I had to wear it to a couple of shindigs I went to recently, but I just don't like it. It's stiff and, you know.
It made you dance very well. Let's have a go.
Well, I worked for that.
Well, we've got a clip here. Let's have a look at it. Probably it was the last time that you appeared on screen in that rig, and that was in Blue Skies.
Well, that isn't full dress suit. The one you're talking about. It's a tail.
Let's have a look. You enjoy watching that?
Well, it interests me to see it again. I haven't seen it lately, and I mean, I know what's there because I've always remembered it was very complicated to get it, all that stuff, the screens, the separate screens. And I did one thing alone, and then they had to change the set so that the one line would go this way, and that was another shot, and then the other line would go that way. In other words, there's a multiple amount of
you on the screen.
Yeah, of split screens put
Yeah.
all together. It's a very complicated process. It wasn't all ready to look finished until about 3 months after it was made, and I was very anxious to know how they could ever get time together so well. The wonderful department of special effects could get that all synced properly. That's what I worried about mostly.
You knock hell out of your canes, don't you?
Oh, I've broken a lot of them. Sometimes on purpose I got mad or something because I wasn't getting something I was trying to get, and then I was like, you know.
I'll tell you another slight technical thing that always puzzled me whenever I see that sequence, and that's How do you get that cane off the floor to shoot into your hand? Is
Well,
that trick photography?
Well, it's not trick photography. It's a mechanical thing. There was a little hole in the ground on the stage. It had a little thing that shot up, and when the cane was there, it went like that and came up on rhythm. The fellow had to, out there, had to press the button just right. We had to have a musician to do it because the timing had to be just a fraction ahead of that beat. Because if you'd hit it on the beat, it would have been a little late and thrown things out. So we had to go and start landed up in my hand, you see.
Extraordinary.
Things like that take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And you pray all the time that they're going to work.
Fred Astaire's only rival to the title of cinema's greatest male dancer wasn't a rival at all. In fact, he and Gene Kelly were close friends. Kelly once described Astaire as the Cary Grant of dancers, whereas he was more the Marlon Brando. A director as well as an actor and dancer, he changed the musicals forever.
What would you say was your own major contribution to the musical? It would seem to me that you were the man who brought muscle and sweat and athleticism into dancing.
Well, that might be true, but I feel that my biggest contribution was changing the costume. Whereas the male dancer in movies was always representative of the upper classes. I certainly couldn't be because of not only the way I dance, the way I wear clothes. If I put on a evening dress, a white tie and tails, I look like a truck driver, you see, or the Iceman cometh. And I think the outfit, changing into sweatshirt and blue jeans and moccasins and that, might have visually changing the look of the male dancer, might have been my greatest contribution. I don't know.
But I remember, I suppose On the Town was the one I remember most vividly, that all of a sudden, and it seemed to me for the first time in a musical, the song and the dance came spontaneously out of the action. Now
Yes,
that was a
well,
contribution
that-
you made, surely.
Yes, we did it on location. We did it on the town on location, and we did it as real people coming down real streets in New York City. And the sailor suits show your body, you know, just the same as a ballet dancer wearing tights. You can see how he dances.
New York, New York, New York, New York, New York. It's a wonderful town.
Hey, fellas, what's the big rush?
We only got 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never been here before.
What could happen to you in one day? What do you think you're gonna do?
New York, New York, a wonderful town. The Bronx is up and the Battery's down. The people ride in a hole in the ground. New York, New York, it's a wonderful town.
But didn't the studio think with On the Town that they had a disaster on their hands?
They thought going to New York was the most ridiculous thing in the world, yes.
Well, they wanted to do it all in the back lot.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Why not, they said, yes.
Cheaper.
Yes. And quicker, yes.
But it was your idea to take it to New
Yes,
York.
yes.
Why?
Because I knew it would work. I somehow knew it would work. Maybe if I'd been older and wiser, I would have said, well, I shouldn't take that kind of a risk. But I felt it was time to do it. And I had planned out ways to hide the camera so that we didn't need a police force around us to hold people back, and we could shoot very quickly. And we did.
We've sailed the seas and we've been the world over, Maine to Mandalay. We've seen the Sphinx and seen the cliffs of Dover, but we can safely say the most fabulous sight is New York in the light of the day, our only day.
New York, New York, a wonderful town. The Bronx is up and the Battery's down. The people ride in a hole in the ground. New York, New York, it's a wonderful town.
Well, let's talk about the musical, which I suppose it's got to be among almost everybody's top 2 or 3 musicals, and that's Singin' in the Rain. How much of that was scripted? Because I can't imagine a script that says, and at this point, Gene goes dancing up and down through puddles. Because who's going to believe that?
No script. Usually the scripts that were written about musicals saying, here Kelly, or substitute Astaire or Connor or Dale, does a dance and it stops the show, you see. Usually they say something like that. It's up to the choreographer to supply a great deal.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. I'm laughing at clouds so dark up above. And the sun's in my heart and I'm ready for love.
The Singing in the Rain number per se was done because it's a charming song, and the producer who happened to write it, Arthur Freed, said, well, what are you going to do with this now? You know, we've done it a couple times before. I said, well, it's going to be raining and I'm going to be singing. And it was one of the easiest numbers I've ever had to put together.
It's fantastic because it's the one everybody remembers.
Well, it's a joyous number. I think people like to see joy on the screen.
The man who produced Singing in the Rain and wrote the title song was Arthur Freed. Freed ran the musicals unit at MGM Studios, and amongst his many successes were enduring classics like The Wizard of Oz, Meet Me in St. Louis, Easter Parade, Showboat, and An American in Paris, Silk Stockings, and Gigi. Despite his incredible track record, he famously raised eyebrows over one composition. As Singing in the Rain co-director Stanley Donen explains here.
We said, well, would you like to write a new song? He said, sure, we'd like to write a new song. What kind of song would you like? And we said, well, a song like Be a Clown, the Cole Porter song.
Be a clown, be a clown. All the world loves a clown. Be a crazy buffoon, and the demoiselles will all swoon. Be a crack jackanapes, and they'll imitate you like apes. Why be a great composer with your rent in arrears? Why be a major poet and you'll owe it for years? When crowds will pay to giggle if you wiggle your ears. Be a clown, be a clown, be a clown.
And they went away and wrote a song which was incredibly like Be a Clown.
Make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh. Don't you know everyone wants to laugh? My dad said be an actor, my son, but be a comical one. They'll be standing in lines for those old honky-tonk monkey shines. Or you could study Shakespeare and be quite elite, and you could charm the critics and have nothing to eat. Just slip on a banana peel, the world's at your feet. Make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh, make 'em laugh. Make 'em laugh.
None of us had the nerve to say, Arthur, this song is too close, you can't do that. So we used it. Arthur brought Irving Berlin down on the stage when we were shooting Make 'em Laugh. And obviously Irving Berlin knew Be a Clown, the Cole Porter song, and as the song went on, his head got lower and lower and lower. And then after about 8 bars, he said to Arthur Freed, who wrote that song? Accusingly. And Arthur said, that's enough, Irving. We don't need to hear any more. Let's go somewhere else. He said, the guys and I, we all got together and we wrote a song. Come on, Irving. And that was the easing out without admitting that he had somewhat borrowed some of it.
In many ways, the world of musicals was a small one, dominated by a very talented group. Stanley Donen co-directed Singing in the Rain with Gene Kelly, and Kelly would later marry Donen's ex-wife. Kelly starred in An American in Paris, which was directed by Judy Garland's husband, Vincent Minnelli, and written by Alan J. Lerner, who also wrote My Fair Lady and Gigi. And Lerner discusses both those films here after this marvellous morsel of Maurice Chevalier.
How lovely to sit here in the shade with none of the woes of man and maid. I'm glad I'm not young anymore. The rivals that don't exist at all, the feeling you're only 2 feet tall. I'm glad that I'm not young anymore. No more confusion, no morning after surprise, no self-delusion. That's when you're telling those lies, she isn't wise. And even if love comes through the door, the kind that goes on forevermore, forevermore is shorter than before. Oh, I'm so glad that I am not young anymore.
Was that one of your favourite ones?
Well, it was actually almost his idea, because when I first met him, I asked him how it felt to be 70 or 71 years old, which is what he was when he made the film. And of course, he said, well, considering the alternative, it wasn't too bad. But I remember when we went into the recording studio to make that song, he said to me, would you mind terribly, he said, come with me and sit outside and tell me if it's all right. So I sat outside in the control room and he recorded the song. And then he said, he came back to see me afterwards. He said, how was it? I said, Maurice, it was perfect. He said, but how was the accent? I said, oh, I understood every word. He said, no, was there enough?
Yeah.
So he was very shrewd. He knew exactly how to be French and toujours.
That's right. Of course, he was one of the legendary figures, was he not, of the... And one of your great heroes, too, wasn't he?
Yes, when I was a child, I grew up listening to Every Little Breeze Seemed to Whisper Louise, and all those songs.
With, of course, a reputation for meanness that few have surpassed.
Well, it isn't that he was mean, but he was frugal. Yes. He was, as we say in the States, close with a dollar,
Yeah, yes.
And at the time, when he was first went out to Hollywood, he was making something like $20,000 a week. There was a parking lot outside Paramount where you could park your car for 10 cents. 4 blocks away, you could park it for 5 cents. And that's where he parked.
Really? That's on $20,000 a week?
Yes, I'm sure he died at a ripe old age with every penny that he ever had, that he ever made.
Yeah. What's your favourite lyric, Alan, of the ones that you've written?
Well, actually, it's from that film. It was the song Gigi.
Oh, you like that one?
Both Fritz and I are we judge things differently, I suppose, than whether something is popular or not. It just so happened that one was, but we always judged it from, did we accomplish what we set out to do,
Yes.
And that song seemed to us to be the most successful from that point of view.
Was it a difficult one to get together, the words and the music?
Well, it was created under rather bizarre circumstances. Not very romantically, I might add. We were working in Paris, and Fritz was in the living room playing, and I was in the John, in the bathroom. And suddenly I heard this beautiful melody, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dee, and I came running into the room, forgetting, if I might say, that my trousers were around my ankles. And I took a header as I went into the living room, and Fritz saw me fall down, and he assumed, I guess, that having fallen down, I would get up because he didn't do anything about it. He said, do you like that? I said, yes, it's beautiful from down there on the floor. And that's, it was Gigi.
That's that lovely love song came to be written, yes. Of course, My Fair Lady, when you talk about that, you talk about an extraordinary phenomenon, don't you? I mean, it's possibly been the most successful musical ever written, hasn't it?
Yes, I believe it has.
Has anybody ever estimated how much money that musical's made from the moment that you wrote it?
Well, it has been estimated roughly, well, as of a few years ago, considering they estimated it from a point of view of all the grosses of all the theaters and all the recordings that have been made, and it came to something like 500 million pounds.
500 million pounds?
Yes.
It's the truth.
So it didn't go to me, but I mean...
It went to that Arab that did it.
Yes, that's right. They've got it all, I assure you.
Yeah, that's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
What made you want to do that as a property? And I mean, obviously, it wasn't a sort of a wild guess on your behalf.
Well, no, somebody, a man named Gabriel Pascal, who owned the rights, a rather legendary figure who had acquired the rights from Shaw. As a matter of fact, I asked him how he ever, because he was an unknown producer, and he said that how he ever got those rights. And he said that he went out to Shaw's house at 8 at St. Lawrence, and he knocked on the door, and he had a very thick Hungarian accent, and the maid came to the door and said, "Who is it?" He said, "I am Gabriel Pascal." And she said, "Who sent you?" And he said, "Tell him fate sent me." So Shaw was on the steps and heard that and came to the door and said, who are you and what do you want?" He said, "I am a producer and I wish to bring your great works to the screen." And Shaw said, "How much money do you have?" And Pascal looked in his pocket and took it. He said, 12 shillings. And Shaw said, "Come in, you're the first honest movie producer I ever met." So that's how he got the rights. And,
Really?
And then he came to Fritz and me about doing it as a musical many, many years later.
Yes. What about I mean, you've written an awful lot of very, very memorable stuff not for singers, but for actors, haven't
Yes.
you? I want to think specifically of Rex Harrison
Rex.
and, of course, Richard Burton. Larry Harvey, too, of course. I mean, he
Yes.
played Camelot, did he not, in London. Do you prefer writing for actors?
Well, I discovered that I did because I was forced to write for Rex. When I say forced, I don't mean it was a hardship, but the idea of doing Shaw, of doing Higgins as a baritone, where suddenly you would hear this marvelous Shavian dialogue, and a moment later there would be a voice coming out, and you'd say, "Where's that voice coming from?" It obviously had to be some relationship. There had to be some relationship to what he sang to his normal voice production, and so we evolved this sort of speech singing for Rex. And the minute we started doing it, I suddenly felt very much at home doing it, and then continued doing it, and because it seemed like my most natural form of expression.
But is it because also that actors perhaps treat the words better than the singer does? I mean, with more reverence, if you
Well,
like,
yes,
more
well, they
understanding.
phrase them. An actor, I've heard you in musicals, an actor phrases, you see, and much more to the spoken word than he does to the musical line.
Damn, 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 damn! I've grown accustomed to her face. She almost makes the day begin. I've grown accustomed to the tune that she whistles night and noon. Her smiles, her frowns, her ups, her downs are second nature to me now. Like breathing out and breathing in. I was serenely independent and content before we met. Surely I could always be that way again. And yet, I've grown accustomed to her looks, accustomed to her voice, accustomed to her face.
And here is the great Rex Harrison also discussing the genesis of his performance in the fabulous My Fair Lady.
I'd never sung in my life, but they didn't want us singing Higgins. They wanted somebody, but they wanted somebody to be able to handle the numbers, and I didn't know whether I could.
What about this music question?
Well, finally they got me to stand round a piano with them and sing Gilbert and Sullivan. And I just did we were all singing Gilbert and Sullivan.
The oddest audition you ever had, in a way.
Yes, but I became less and less embarrassed because they were singing too, but they were also listening to me, and they decided that I had about 3 notes, 3 possible notes.
Which is the best qualification for doing a musical.
Well, for which they could write the numbers round.
Yeah.
I mean, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum, I've grown accustomed to a face. It's a very simple melodic line, and not hard to use or not use. Anyway, I finally said I'd do it. and they left saying they would start writing new numbers for me. Now, they knew I was going to do it. I went to Wigmore Street to study singing, bel canto singing.
Just all the sort of operatic bit.
All the operatic bit. I realized within 2 or 3 days that it was absolute. I mean, it would take me 10 years, and then I wouldn't be a singer. So I got hold of Alan and Fritz in America and said, look, I don't know, I don't think I can do it. I don't know what to do about this because I'm not going to be able to sing the numbers in any way, I don't think. So they said, well, why don't you ring up a man called Bill Lowe? He's a conductor at the Coliseum.
The pit orchestra?
The pit orchestra. He might be able to, you know, he's heard all the methods of, over the years of musical comedy people. Why don't you talk to him? So I rang up Bill Lowe, and he came round to see me, and I had a piano. I was staying at an hotel at the time, at the Connaught, and he had a piano moved in, and he started to fiddle on the piano with it. And I started with him to learn the technique of speaking on pitch, which is you can only do if you've got an inbuilt sense of rhythm, because otherwise you couldn't do it. Finally, I got to the stage where I used the notes I could use, or I wanted to use, and I simply spoke the rest of it.
There was a mythology that somebody couldn't take something from the stage to the screen.
Absolutely, absolutely, because a lot of purely stage actors are too big in front of a camera. I mean, they project too much. But there were a lot of people after the part, obviously. And it was a great plum part to be picked. And a lot of people wanted me to go and show my face in Hollywood and all that, but I didn't, because I sat on top of my hill in Portofino, thought, well, if they want me, they can come to me.
And they did?
Finally. But they went to a lot of other people first, but they did come to me finally, yes. And so I went out there and did it.
Now, Julie Andrews, who'd been a great star, and become a great screen star subsequently.
Yes.
Who had the triumph with you on the stage, was not chosen, and Audrey Hepburn was instead.
I think the reason for that was very largely because Julie had not made her big success at the time of the casting of the film. Plus the fact that they had me, who they considered to be a doubtful box office entity, because I was then more stage than screen. So they felt, it really is very largely a question of securing their investment. They went to one of the then $1 million girls.
That's a girl who can get $1 million for a picture.
Yes, it's $1 million for a picture, and they consider it draws a lot of money into the box office, which indeed they do, like Taylor and Hepburn.
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain.
By George, he's got it! By George, he's got it! Now once again, where does it rain?
On the plain, on the plain.
And where's that soggy plain?
In Spain, in Spain.
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain. Bravo!
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain.
Julie Andrews may have been passed over for the film of My Fair Lady, but it meant that she was available for Mary Poppins. That won her an Oscar and led to her being cast in what was then the highest-grossing film of all time, The Sound of Music.
Let's talk about a spectacular success that you had. I mean, the film, I think, has grossed more money, The Sound of Music, than any other movie, hasn't it? I think it's
certainly than any other musical.
Than any other musical, yeah.
Maybe now that since it's re-released, I think it probably is #1 in grossing.
Yes.
It is close to like Godfather, I think.
It was kind of an odd story about that, though, wasn't it? The studio really had no faith in it when it first came out.
I don't know about that. I know that we were all very aware that it could be over-saccharine and sweet, and we had to be very careful about it, that with religion and nuns and children and mountains and all that sweetness going on, it was too much. And so we all tried to play it down and make it very real and as much as we could.
Yes.
But I don't think... no, there was a considerable lot of money spent on the film and hours put into it. I don't think they thought it wasn't too important. I do know that I don't suppose anybody had any idea how successful it was going to be.
Yes. Well, let's have a look at the sequence from it that I suppose everybody remembers. We showed part of it before you came on, which is that magnificent opening sequence, that huge shot over the mountains there, and the camera comes onto you. Beautiful moment, I think. This.
It was very cold.
It's a smashing shot, isn't it? That over the top of the hill, the helicopter shot
yes.
there. Yeah.
It was an amazing shot to be in the middle of, because it was a helicopter that was coming at one sideways, of course, because the cameraman was hanging out at the side of the helicopter. And how they ever do that, I don't know, because there's no door or anything. It's just a camera down at you like this. But it was a jet helicopter, and every time we would do many, many takes before they were satisfied, and so the helicopter would come towards me and get closer and closer. This great sort of giant crab or grasshopper sort of looked like it was sidestepping towards me, and then it would make a circle and go back and come through the trees again, and I'd have to rush to the end of the field and start all over again. But every time it made the circle to go back, it would knock me flat from the downdraft of the jets. And so I would do my lovely bit, and then it would go bam, you know. And I'd pick myself up, and I got so angry because it just kept knocking me down.
Did you swear?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Despite the phenomenal success of The Sound of Music, the 1960s saw the popularity of the traditional movie musical starting to fade. The films of the Beatles and Elvis were outperforming movie adaptations of Broadway hits. Of course, there were exceptions, amongst them Barbra Streisand, here talking about her movie debut, Funny Girl.
What would you say was the most memorable thing about it?
Oh, God. It's terrible. It's a very, I think, a difficult film to describe, because intellectually and from, you know, a paid critic's point of view, you know, perhaps it is sort of old-fashioned or corny or something, you know. But life is corny. But on the other hand, I mean, it is a very entertaining picture, I feel. People get involved with it. The audience, it's an audience picture. The audience seems to like it. And so as a critic, you know, I wouldn't want to have to be a critic seeing it. It's a silly thing, and yet the audience thinks that, you know, if you sing some songs in a movie, then you're a singer. Now, I do maybe, I don't even know how many, 50 scenes in Funny Girl, and they're all just talking, which is called acting, you know, which is called being. And then I sing, 10 songs. So would you say I was more of an actress or a singer? Well, I would say I was more an actress, Singing is only an extension of acting, so to me, I've never done a musical, but I've only done stories with songs.
There's a number in the film in which you roller skate. It wasn't in the play, as I remember.
Did you see the film?
Yeah.
Oh, when did you see it?
In New York, a couple of days ago. In which you do some rather impressive roller skating. Now, could you skate before the film?
Just as much as you see me skate. I had a fake that I was awkward. Actually, all these girls were, skating for like 6 weeks, and they all took these flops. Now, I'm not a very good skater, but I was the only one who never fell. But it was like sort of a joke, to make me fall. But I'm not a very good skater, and but I did have to, work at, looking that awkward, because I skate better than what I was supposed to, But I used to go skating every Saturday in Brooklyn. in the Empire roller skate drome or something like that. I don't know what it's called. Empire roller drome, something like that. It was sort of, fun to do, roller skate. And I remember thinking, because I had to borrow the skates. You have to pay like $25 and you get skates, And my big dream was to buy my own skates. And these girls had these tin boxes, I remember, divided in half, like there were 4 colors on the boxes. And this to me was like, oh, the end, with white skates, Because when you rent them, you get these dirty old skates. I never did get my own skates.
I'd rather be blue thinking of you. I'd rather be blue over you than be happy with somebody else. Will I be good? Will I be bad? Don't be a fool, you fool. My little flat, I'm turning that into a Sunday school. While you're away, I'm here to say there'll be no Iceman there. Singing the blues, I'm gonna use nothing but Frigidaire. I'd rather be blue, thinking of you. I'd rather be blue over you than be happy with somebody else. Blue over you, I'd rather be blue over you than be happy with somebody
That performance won Barbra Streisand her Best Actress Oscar for 1969. 4 years later, another musical star was picking up the same award, Liza Minnelli for Cabaret. The role of Sally Bowles made her a huge star, but the idea that it took her out of the shadow of her mother, Judy Garland, was something she had little time for.
Liza.
Yes, sir.
There were something like 60 photographers and 50 journalists here today, and you've got star treatment. Do you enjoy that? Do you like that?
It makes you feel like when you were little and you pretended to be a princess. There's something lovely about it. There's also something temporary about it. In other words, I know that I could whip on the fox, whip on the eyelashes, whip over the Dorchester, do that, and go home and put my jeans on again. Yes. Because I think that if you get to rely on that kind of treatment, or if you depend on it, you'll ultimately be disappointed and a bit heartsick.
What about the pressure? I mean, one of the things, you have loss of privacy, don't you? I mean, people asking all sorts of personal questions. Do you just think, well, that goes with the game?
I think, it doesn't affect me as much as it might somebody else, because I've never known privacy. And I mean, when I was born, somebody took a picture and put it in the paper. It was one of those things. So I really don't have any area of comparison. So it doesn't bother me that much.
Yeah. Because
I find that I do have a great deal of privacy by just not pretending to be somebody else.
Now, the film Cabaret, in this country anyway, this established you very much as a person in your own right, as opposed to Judy Garland's daughter. Do you think it was important in that way?
Yes, but see, I never mind. I'm very proud of my mom, and being people, it sounds so ominous when somebody says, people used to call you Judy Garland's daughter. It sounds like the son of Dracula. What are they talking about? My mother was a genius. The only thing that ever gets me upset or annoyed or even uptight is when I'm put in the position of defending her, because I feel she needs no defense.
For many, Judy Garland ranks alongside Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire as one of musical's greatest stars. Open, vulnerable, and ultimately tragic. From The Wizard of Oz to A Star is Born and beyond, the world watched her grow, flourish, and then fade as she struggled with depression, addiction, and weight issues.
Again. That's right, turn. Take a break.
When we finished summer stock, Judy went away to lose some weight, and we realized we didn't really have a finish to the picture. She hadn't done her big last number. And in the 2 weeks she was away, she lost like 20 pounds and looked absolutely great. So an awful lot of people thought when we did Get Happy, we'd taken a number out of an older picture, something that hadn't been used in another picture. But it wasn't. It was only 2 weeks later we did Get Happy.
Forget your troubles, come on, get happy. You better chase all your cares away. Shout hallelujah, come on, get happy. Get ready for the judgment day. The sun is shining, come on, get happy. The Lord is waiting to take your hand. Shout hallelujah, come on, get happy. We're going to the promised land. We're heading across the river, wash your sins away in the tide. It's all so peaceful on the other side. Forget your troubles, come on, get happy. You better chase all your cares away. Shout hallelujah, come on, get happy. Get ready for the judgment day. Forget your troubles, come on, get happy. Chase your cares away. Hallelujah, get happy before the judgment day.
This interview with BBC News comes from 1963 as Judy arrived in London to make the film I Could Go On Singing with Dirk Bogarde.
I believe you had a bit of a job landing, didn't you?
Well, the fog closed in around the airport. It wasn't anyone's fault. We wound up in Manchester, and I've been there before. It's a nice town. And last time I'm back in London, that's important.
Now, I Could Go On Singing is your first British film, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
How do you enjoy working in this country?
I enjoy it very much. Very much. I like making films here. I like working here. I like living here.
Now, Dirk Bogarde is a very personal friend of yours, as well as your co-star in the film, isn't he?
Yes, yes.
So this must have been a great help to you.
Yes, that was one of the things that I was so disappointed about last night when we couldn't land, because I knew that he was at the airport to greet me, and you know, he doesn't come out very often to do that. He's a tough guy, as a matter of fact. And the fact that he would wait up that long to greet me and that we couldn't touch ground made me sad.
I Could Go On Singing would end up being her final film. And it was in London in 1969 Judy would finally lose her battle with drugs and alcohol. She was just 47.
I didn't think that Judy was an impressive or a good dramatic actress. I thought she was a unique and marvelous comedian with a great emotional depth and power. And she had a quality that perhaps could be compared to that of Chaplin at his best. That is to say, a funny little person, gay, happy, playing against either a personal background or a family background of sadness and tragedy. And if you place that little comic figure playing against a sad context, it's most moving. And Judy could be marvelously moving when she was in such a situation.
If musicals are about anything, they are about big emotions and moments of magic. Judy Garland delivered emotion. Astaire and Kelly and their various partners brought the magic. They were stars whose like we'll never see again. And it was thanks to them that Hollywood's golden age